Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads. I hope you're doing well. I'm excited. I am really excited because we're back at this collection, Twisted by Jeffrey Deaver. It's going to go down as one of my favorite collections of short stories. I can just feel it, and I'm going to tell you why. But I have 4 short stories to talk about. If you saw my YouTube post earlier this week, I posted about I have my first ever 5-star short story. Yes, since I launched Saturday Shorts in August of 2024, been doing episodes. I think I'm up to like episode 60 some. Yeah, I have my first ever 5-star, and I don't give 5 stars a lot. I've given 2 5-star ratings to books, Goblet of Fire and The Black Echo. Never a short story until this week, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Got to give you some fun facts, too, before we dive right in. This is a 2003 collection by Deaver. There is 16 short stories. I've read 7 so far. I could basically binge the rest of this really easy, but I'm going to savor it like fine wine and come back to this in a couple months. But so far, the average rating of the 7 short stories I've read in this collection is a 4.56, and that should tell you the quality of my opinion about these short stories. And so I really like the introduction. I read it again. It's only like 2 or 3 pages where Deaver talks about short stories, how he got into this, and I really liked it because it also talks about when he was very young, short stories kind of being something that's always been on his mind. And as a young boy, he wasn't very outspoken, kind of an introvert, wasn't into sports. And that's why he got into reading and writing. He liked those. It's lonely, but yet something of a hobby for him to keep him occupied. And we're all benefiting because he did that and became an author. But he was inspired by the likes of Bradbury, Edgar Allan Poe, and Conan Doyle. And those are 3 great ones. But yeah, I am really excited to talk about this. Jeffrey Deaver has this down pat, I think. He really knows how to twist you. And this is such an apt title for this book. And so without further ado, we're going to dive right in and talk about this. And so let's dive right in and talk about story number 1. So story number 1 is titled The Weekender. And the summary of this is you have what appears to be a convenience store robbery. You have 2 criminals. One is named Jack. The other is named Toth. And they're holding up an Ardmore Drugs. They're out in the Northeast part of the United States. And during this holdup, they end up killing one of the customers and they take another customer hostage. And Jack, who seems to be the ringleader, Toth, who seems to be this kind of unhinged guy and very sketchy, they end up getting in their car, putting this person they abducted in the car with them, and they take off, eluding the convenience store, and they drive several miles to an adjacent town where they think they can lay low, and the cops are on their trail. They get into this summer house that appears to be abandoned. They hide the car. They drag the person they abducted into the house with them, and the manhunt for these criminals continues to take place all around them, and they're trying to lay low until everything blows over. And what starts as kind of a desperate act for money turns out to be a very tense and psychological confrontation. And there is a lot of twists that happen. And so that's kind of the summary of this thing. What makes it a really good short story for me is I liked both of the criminals because they have their own place in the story. Toth is just this guy, he just will shoot first, ask questions later. He's not all there, kind of, is what I interpreted. Jack, on the other hand, thinks things through, thinks about things, is more decisive. I like the fact that they're holding up in a summer home out in the Northeast. You have police in pursuit, canvassing the towns, shining their, lights on the area, trying to figure out if they can find out where they went wrong in this car chase when they got ahead of them. And they're trying to find these guys. And the hostage that they took from the store is a guy named Weller. And Weller is a salesman. And I say that because it's interesting tie into the story. Then a lot of stuff starts hitting the fan as they're in this summer home, and I really, really enjoyed that. There's this kind of eerie psychological story that's building, and then it's just an absolute smack in the face with some of the twists. I give this short story a 4.4. I thought it was interesting. I actually liked how Deaver created this atmosphere. There's a very grimy, these killers are out for, cold hard cash. You can almost, when you're reading it, smell the muskiness of this summer home. And I thought it was really, really good. I remember that especially because Deaver is not one who writes in a way that you get these really smells. You get when you're reading a story, and this one had it. I thought it was really good, not overly descriptive. Usually he's more plot driven, and I really liked kind of this character psychological story, and it really just hit with me. 4.4, really, really enjoyed it. So story number 2 is titled Beautiful, and it is a very appropriate title for a short story. The summary of this one: we have a former supermodel, Carrie. She's retreated from her town in LA, and she goes to Cromwell, Massachusetts, across the country. And here's why. You get to realize that she is being stalked. She has a persistent stalker that is in her life, kind of tormenting her from afar, has never violated a law, is very aware of what the laws are and what he can and cannot do, but yet he's always there. And she feels like she doesn't have a life. Now, Carrie is absolutely gorgeous. She was, I believe in the story, was one of the most beautiful people in the world, one of the most beautiful supermodels. And she lives a very affluent life, but she always has this stalker hanging over, so she never feels like she's free. The police, as she engages them in Los Angeles and the surrounding counties, she realizes that they can't do anything, that the stalker by the name of David Dell, he has never violated a law. He's never done anything that would give them recourse to arrest him and do anything. They've had several talks with him, but they can't really enforce any kind of breaking of laws with this gentleman. So Carrie's emotional state kind of continues to erode. And so she ends up going across the country, trying to evade this person, and does it in a very sneaky way. She does a road trip. She stays in different areas, try to see if she's not followed. She doesn't tell anyone outside of a very close circle of people where she is going. And she basically leaves everything she has known in Los Angeles and heads to Massachusetts. When she gets there, however, David Dell knows where she's at, and he comes outside of her house. Again, knowing the laws in that area, she has to then get to the police and try to figure out if they can do anything. She mentions what all she's been through in Los Angeles, and the police in Cromwell can't really do anything as well. And that's kind of what drives the rest of the story and what's going to take place. A decision has to be made for her mental well-being, and that's kind of the premise of this thing. So what makes it really good for me. Carrie and her plight is interesting. You have money, you have beauty, you have a affluent life, you live in a great area, you're the most beautiful model in the world, but you have problems, and you do not feel like you have the life that everyone else sees in their own optics. And I think it's a really interesting way, because you hear about a lot about this as well when you read about people that win the lottery and their lives, you think their life's going to be great, and it's really not, and this has that feel to it. I really liked David Dell. He's not heavily in the story, but he's there enough that he's this little itch that you can't scratch, and you relate to how Carrie is feeling in the story. I thought it was really well done. He ends up having this special room for her in his new place. She can't figure out how he found her when she did this very kind of cloak and dagger move from Los Angeles to Massachusetts. She just feels this helplessness, this limiting of police to help her. And so she takes matter into her own hands. And so in terms of rating overall, I give it a 4.4. It is a fantastic short story. It plays heavily with vanity, vulnerability, how far someone will go to reclaim kind of their control of their own life. The ending really catches you off guard, but it makes total sense. I thought it was going one way, it goes another way, and it's just well done, well plotted and paced. And so now we're on to story number 3. So story number 3 is for Services Rendered, and it is my 5-star short story. This is going to stick with me for a while, but let's dive right in and talk about the summary of this. So the story centers around 2 people. There's a psychiatrist named Harry Bernstein, and there is one of his clients, a patient named Patsy Randolph. They both live in Manhattan. Now, Harry, the psychiatrist, has a very interesting clientele. He does well for himself. However, his soon-to-be ex-wife and his daughters all have needs. They're in college. One's about to be in college, and they want to go to fancy colleges, expensive colleges. So there's a lot of expenses that he has. And so even though Harry would like to work in the Bronx more than Manhattan and deal with the weirdness of the problems that the ultra wealthy have, he ends up continuing to do what he does because, well, he needs the money. When Patsy comes into the fray and becomes one of his patients, he's encapsulated by her issue. And Patsy's issue is twofold. One, she believes her husband is cheating on her. And second, she believes her husband is speaking to her and as kind of the ghost of her dead father and saying cruel and mean things. And obviously Patsy has some unresolved conflict with her father, especially when it comes to these porcelain figurines, these little birds that she got when her father had passed, and she starts to realize that some of them come up broken in the house. And so it really sets Patsy off, and she conveys this to Harry as her psychiatrist. And so Harry tries to work with Patsy to overcome some of her issues and try to hit them head on and not, do it with kid gloves, and he's more focused. And so it's interesting. It's a very clever, dark little tale about manipulation, because even though their own Harry and Patsy's their stories and their strife and what they're dealing with is interesting, there's layers to this, and there's more that's going on than what you see at first. And it becomes a kind of a story of what folks will do for love and money within their life. And that's all I'm going to say, because I think this is one you definitely should read, so I don't want to spoil it. What makes it a good short story? It's classic Deaver, honestly. It has a double twist in it, and it's very well done. For one, I kind of knew what I thought was going to happen, and then I realized it didn't happen, and then I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then it's like, oh, wait, but there's more. And it just, like, you get hit in the head, and then you get hit in the head again as you're falling, and it's like, you're out. That's all she wrote. And it was so good. The dread that Patsy has throughout the story, the conflict that Harry has, introspectively thinking about his life and where he could do right, make things better for him in his financial situation and just his enjoyment of life and what he wants to do with his passion, they're all kind of window dressing for what's really happening. And you think that someone's pulling the wool over someone else, but you don't realize they're both trying to pull the wool over each other. And that's all I'm going to say, but it is beautifully done. The plot is great. The pace is phenomenal. The ending is great. The characters are interesting in their story. And then when you get the twist and you look back at the story, you're like, holy crap. And it is absolutely a fantastic short story, very deserving of 5 stars. The best short story I have read since I started Saturday Shorts. I can hardly speak. It's that good. I really, really enjoyed this short story. So now on to the last short story. So the last short story is titled The Fall Guy. It was previously published in a mystery magazine before it was added to this collection, Twisted, with Jeffrey Deaver, and it's interesting. It is a very interesting short story. It's one that I read after I read For Services Rendered, and so I was worried that it wouldn't stand up on its own, and it certainly does. I really like this one as well. The summary of this one, we have a beautiful woman named Carolyn, and she's at a gas station. She gets held at gunpoint by an armed robber who wants to both abductor. He has his arm around her neck and a gun, and he wants to take her on a little joyride and make some innuendos that things will get romantic after he finds an area for her to pull over. And her white knight is a gentleman that she kind of caught her eye on, that was talking on the phone, gassing up his car. And his name is Lawrence, and he steps in and handles the mugger. And when it's all over, Carolyn and Lawrence decide to meet up at a bar at a hotel and have a drink and talk about what happened. And kind of like in a Cinemax way, they become romantic. After all of that, I guess, and Carolyn's married, and while this is all going down, and so you definitely kind of, as you're reading this, realize she is not a nice person. And as you start reading more, you realize that on, I think, their second encounter, Carolyn asked Lawrence if he would be interested in not only continuing their affair, but she wants him to murder her husband because she believes he is having an affair of his own, and she offers them $100,000 to do so. Lawrence, however, has an interesting backstory, and that's what makes it interesting. So what I enjoyed about this is the pace and the characters. They're very grimy. They're very dirty. They're not nice. And it's an interesting plot because Lawrence's backstory, he spent time in prison. It makes a lot of sense. Carolyn is very crafty, and she has an ulterior motive with all of this, and it becomes evident. But Lawrence kind of has this, when you're reading it, he's kind of this beefcake and not all there, but kind of, and so they hatch this plan to carry out to deal with Carolyn's husband, and it doesn't go to plan. And it doesn't go to plan in a very interesting way. And that's all I'm going to say about this one because I don't want to spoil this. I gave this a 4.5. I thought it was great. How this ends is really sort of out there. You're expecting one thing and you totally get duped, but in such a good way. It makes total sense. You may see this coming, but you don't understand the why of how it's coming. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so in terms of overall, I cannot sing the praises enough of this collection. Deaver writes one heck of a short story. The twists, the pacing, 25 to 30 pages, he can just suck you into a story. And then when you think you're enjoying it, when you think you've got kind of how this is probably going to come to an end, he just punches you right in the nose. And it's in such a good way. I mean, you stand up, your nose is bloody, and you want to shake the guy's hand because it's like, wow, I did not see that coming, and I'm so happy that it happened. And so, yeah, that's my take. This is a fantastic collection. If you get a chance to pick this up, well worth your time. If you're into thrillers, you like short stories, you like twists, you like to, get kind of shook on how stories end, this is for you. And that, my friends, is my episode of Saturday Shorts, my first 5-star short story. I'm so excited. I want to get back to this, but again, I'm going to let it simmer for a while, and I will come back to this in a couple months and try to finish it off because I think these are fantastic. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.